Hey guys, Sean here from Craft Elements, and I want to give you a quick tip. A lot of people contact us who are using our molds with wood and resin and are looking for the best way to pre-cut the wood to fit some of our silicone molds. As we come up with more unique molds with different shapes, curvatures, and angles, it becomes a little bit of a problem. If you've got a CNC machine, probably not so much of a problem, but if you've just trying to cut a piece of wood to fit, then it could be a problem. So I want to show you a quick tip here using any one of our molds, particularly molds that have, again, strange corners, edges, curves, things like that. In this case, one of our niche curry board molds with a handle. And what I want to do, or rather what you want to do, is when you first get your mold, is create a template, a clear template, essentially ending up with something like a piece of plexiglass. So what you're going to do is you're going to mix your epoxy resin, and you're only going to need to fill this up 1/4 of an inch, maybe 1/2 an inch, just enough to give you a solid template. Pour your resin in, and again, I already pre-sprayed this mold with mold release, so you'll want to definitely do that before you pour your resin. So I'm going to take my clear resin, pour it in. Again, you don't have to fill the mold all the way up. You could probably get away with 1/4 inch, 3/8. And what I like to do is I used to like to use a little wood block right in the center to give me something to grab onto to move the template around if I need to. So once this is set, we're going to demold it, and we're going to take a look at our template and how to use it. All right, folks, we are back, and our resin is now set. Again, we're making a clear template for tracing and cutting wood. So let's just do a quick demold of this clear resin. And there you go. We have our clear plexiglass-like template, which is going to be the exact fit of our mold. Here's one I did a little while back of one of our hearts. And again, same thing, blocking it, and it basically is a clear template. Again, why we make them clear is because once you put them on your wood, you can physically see, you know, what your cut wood is going to look like inside of your mold. That's why we make them clear. So now that I have our clear template, I'm going to use it on the wood to trace, and then we're going to cut the wood to fit. So again, you can see now from the camera angle that this template really gives you a lot of flexibility. You can line it up depending on, you know, this is going to, the empty area is going to be where our resin is going to be filled, and obviously then we're going to want to cut this. So let's call it there. I want to get a little bit in the handle, and I want to meet the edge down here of the curve of this board. And yeah, let's call it there. And that's it. You can take your pen or pencil, trace around your resin template. You've traced your template, and you are ready to cut this out. Now, this isn't going to be a whole video on how to use the saw. There are different ways to cut this out. You could use a scroll saw, is probably the best way, more accurate, which is a very, very thin blade saw with a little table you go around. You might be able to use a bandsaw depending on your angles or your curves. A bandsaw would be a good way to do this. You'd always use a jigsaw. So I've got a rigid wireless, or not wireless, rigid battery powered jigsaw that I use. And I would just go clamp this to a desk or a workbench and then cut with my jigsaw on the lines. However, this is where it gets cool, is if you have a router table, this is a better way to do it. You're going to want to get something called a flush trim bit, which is essentially a bit with a collar or bearing on top, and that bearing is going to run along the sides of your newly cut template. The blade area is going to cut your wood. So what you're going to want to do to do this process is cut out your wood roughly. Cut it on the outside of the line. What I mean by that is, here is our line, obviously. Do not cut right on the line. Cut maybe an 1/8 or 1/4 inch outside, and it doesn't even have to be perfect, it can be rough. And then once we've done that, we're going to double-sided tape or foam tape our template to the wood, and then use our flush trim bit in our router, our router table, to get a really perfect cut. Let's see how it's done. So again, if I was not going to run this through the router table, I'd take my saw, jigsaw, whatever you're using, and get a nice clean line, as clean as I could possibly get. Maybe clean it up by sanding. But in this case, since I'm using the router table, I'm going to cut this a little bit bigger than the actual template size. So I'm over here at our router table, and if you aren't familiar with a router table, it's literally just a flat piece of wood or metal that a regular router attaches to. Doing a quick bend here, you can see underneath the table is a regular run-of-the-mill plug-in router. If you're a resin artist or a hobbyist woodworker and don't have a router table, I'd highly recommend you get one. They are relatively inexpensive, and I honestly have mentioned this in previous videos, but they're super handy. Like if you're just doing trim work or cutting off a meniscus of a resin pour, a router table makes it so much easier. So, you know, for, I would say a minimum of maybe $180, they go up to thousands, of course, but you know, you can get a basic router table for a couple $100 with the router and be good to go for what most of the stuff you need to do. So, one trick here is to make sure that your flush trim bit has enough blade to cover the height of your wood. So this one's just enough. You can see here, I've got just enough blade to trim out this wood, and then the collar or the bearing is going to ride along my template. So what do I mean by that? So let's go back down here and line this back up. And you can see as we talked about, we overcut the drawing line we did so we could actually use this method. And what we're going to do now is really easy. We're going to get some two-sided tape. So basically some foam tape or Scotch mount tape. So here's some Scotch mount tape, but there are plenty of different options on the market for two-sided tape. Open this up. I'm going to flip my template, and I'm going to adhere some two-sided tape to the template. The function of this two-sided tape is literally just to hold the template to the wood while we are running it through our router table. If you do not do this, you're probably going to end up with a messed up piece. It's probably pretty sufficient there for holding it in place. Peel off the tape and line up our template to the wood here. Perfect. Press it down to make a little bond, and again, you're going to remove this later, but you can see now, very close, I've got just a little bit of wood. So we're doing that so we could run this through the router table and take off that entire section. Going to install the router bits underneath here. This is the fun part. You can see how this lines up here. The bearing is at the height of the template, and the blade part of the router bit is at the wood area. So once we run the router and the blade and this template, or rather the bearing, rolls down the edge of our template, it's going to match that to the wood. That's it. That's the magic. So we now have our wood perfectly the same shape as our mold because this template came right of our mold. Let's go test it out. All right, let's take the template off of the wood we cut. Easiest way to do that is just to stick a screwdriver under there and kind of pry it up. Depending on the quality of the two-sided tape you have, this might be not an easy task. Anyway, that's it. Watch this. Ta-da! A literal perfect fit. No gaps whatsoever. Perfectly fits the strange curves or radius of the mold. We could do the exact same thing with this heart or any of our molds by making these templates and cutting it with a router table or just a jigsaw to make that wood fit. Anyway, we've got this wood to fit. We might as well pour some resin in and finish the project. So I've gone ahead and done something extra on this piece. I've put it into our CNC machine and carved a Ford logo out of it because this board is going to a Ford dealer friend of mine. So that's why that's there. Anyway, the whole point of this video is to show just how cool these templates are when you make them to fit the board, fit your wood right into these curved molds that otherwise you probably wouldn't have been able to get a nice fit on. Anyway, we're going to take our HDP block, put it on top, and this is going to hold our wood down while we pour the resin. And I mixed up some Total Boat deep pour, or thick set rather, epoxy, and I've tinted it blue in the best sort of Ford blue I could come up with. Mold has been pre-sprayed with mold release, and we're just going to pour it right in. Then I'm going to fill our Ford carving here. Don't really care about being super careful at this point because I'm going to run it through the planer after we're done, and anything kind of left over is going to get planed right off. All right. A few days have gone by on our resin board, our fishtail mold, and I'm just going to demold it. You see our HDP block is stuck because our resin came up a little bit high, and bonding it. It's gone now. Anyway, so you've got your board there, and then we're just gonna peel it right out of the mold and see how easy and clean that was. Pretty clean mold left that of course you can reuse over and over. And here is our beautiful board that we're gonna run through the planer now. Next thing we're going to do is round off these edges to make it nice and curved around the sides. Well, that's it. Our beautiful fishtail cutting board, serving board is now done. And I hope you enjoyed watching this video and picked up our quick tip going from our curved or radius mold to making a template that we could use for tracing and routing to our final piece. For more videos like this, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to us here on the Crafted Elements YouTube channel. And if you're looking to purchase one of our charcuterie board molds, we've got a few different styles available with different handle configurations. You can do so at craftedelements.com. Thanks again.